Hello. Quick disclaimer / trigger warning at the start of this episode. If you've been online in any Doctor Who spaces at all since the airing of the Interstellar Song Contest, you'll know that there has been a lot of discourse regarding the political themes of the episode, particularly when it comes to the genocide that's currently occurring in Palestine. Now, this is something that I wanted to talk about. I had a lot of thoughts about it, a lot of complicated thoughts to get out, and I hope that I've got it out in some sort of coherent way. I know usually people come to these just for some light chatter and debate about Doctor Who episodes, but I just wanted to make people aware up top that we do delve into some more intense topics this week. I also wanted to take the time to redirect the focus towards Palestinians and the horrific things that are happening over in Palestine. And what I've done is I've gathered together some links to some fundraisers and charities that are supporting Palestinians, and I've gathered those all in the description down below. So if you are in a position to help, please, I would urge you to go over there and donate anything that you can, because it's so important. Thank you. Hello, you lovely lot, and welcome back to Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. I am your host, as always, Josh Carr, and you know the drill by now. It's season 2. We're going through every single episode. We've been doing it for 6 weeks, so if you haven't been listening to my coverage of every episode of season 2 so far, please go back, because I've had some wonderful guests covering every single episode, and today is, of course, no different. I'm joined by those wonderful WHOLALA'S boys. It's Sam and Alasdair.
Woo-hoo.
How are you?
Oh,
hello.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us.
Oh, it's great to have
Thank you.
I was worried because, you know, when you have double acts, sometimes they get very contentious about which name goes first. Is it Sam and Alasdair? Is it Alasdair and Sam?
Oh,
I
wow.
have no idea.
Absolutely fuming. I saw you put it first. But
Oh, no.
Can't argue with that. Can't argue with alphabetical.
Yeah, I thought I'll mix it up. I'll do Sam and Alasdair on the pod. I'll do Alasdair and Sam on the socials.
Yeah.
You know.
We've been fighting about it for over 2 years.
Is that like saying Deck and Ant? Am I messing up here? But no, it's absolutely
I'll settle for the
lovely.
WHOLALA'S boys. I like that.
Yeah, the WHOLALA'S boys.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I listen to Who's There, not Who's There, Who Watch. There's too many that start with Who. And I listen to Who Watch, and you often get referred to as the horrible WHOLALA'S boys on that. And
David does love to call us that, yeah.
The horrible
David
WHOLALA'S
loves
boys
to
is
call you
funny.
that, yes. I will say it is absolutely lovely to finally have you on. Long overdue, as I was saying to you before.
I
Long
know.
overdue, but you're finally here. You're on Who Knew, and we're here to
We
talk
made
about...
it.
We made it. Look at us. Look at us. And we're here to talk about the Interstellar Song Contest by Juno Dawson. Episode 6. Is it episode 6? Yeah, it's episode
Yeah.
6.
Episode
Of
6.
season 2. And wow. It's we've got a lot to talk about. We've definitely got a lot to talk about.
It was a jam-packed
It's
episode.
jam-packed. Let's get into it. I mean, one thing that I do want to
Yes.
ask first of all, I've done with everybody, is just a little recap of the series so far.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, keep it as brief as you like. We're now at the point where it's like you've now got to cover like 5 episodes in a couple of minutes. But how have you both found the series so far? Sam, we'll start with you. How have you found the series so far?
It has been manic in like all the best ways. I think coming off of the last season, we were all wondering tonally, like, will it be exactly the same? We know they were produced back to back. The way I kind of felt coming out of season 1 was that there was like an overarching story that would be finished by the end of season 2. So I was so curious going in. And it's just been so fun. Like, I think this season has been so fun, and it feels like Doctor Who in a bottle. Like, each adventure every single week has been so memorable and fun and emotional. And what I really like is that we have that like through plot of the Doctor trying to get Belinda home the whole time. So there's like an interconnected weave between all the episodes. And I've just had so much fun with it.
Yeah,
Good.
I agree. I've liked
Good.
the overall story arc to try and get Blinda home. I think that's been nice.
Mhm.
The Return of the Gods, I've been a little bit more about this time, I think. But I will say, Lux so far has been the absolute standout of the season for me. So it's not to say that there's not great stories to be told with the gods. And I love the variety we've had. I think like the prediction we made that was completely false when we were going into RTD2 back before the 60th specials, we were like, there's not going to be time for experimental episodes anymore because they're such short series. And the reality is, like, every single episode, every single week is something completely different. Like they're still exploring really every genre that Doctor Who can do, and they feel so different week to week. And I'm quite enjoying how much people do and don't like different stories. Like, you know, the consensus was that a lot of people loved Lucky Day, and then me and Sam came out that one, we're like, oh, we didn't like Lucky Day. And then this week I was like, oh, I love the Interstellar Song Contest, and there was, you know, it's been really divisive this week's episode.
Yeah.
So and there was some people replying to us on WHOLALA'S saying like this was the first one that I like truly hated, and I was like, wow, because for me this was one of my favorites. So I kind of love how it's just going into different places. It's not playing it safe. It's bringing so much variety.
I've been very much the same. I think the first 5 episodes I've loved every single one, and I went into the series with very low expectations because season 1 I liked each episode in isolation, but as a package it didn't fully work for me. And then Joy to the World I wasn't as warm on as some other people were, and then I was like, I don't know, my hype just didn't seem to arrive, and I was a bit sad about that. And then I was like, well maybe it's just a nice way to go into Doctor Who and not have any expectations week to week, and it's paid off because it means my expectations have been way exceeded every single week. I mean, I will reveal, I mean, maybe this week has been affected by the fact that maybe my hype has gotten back up a little bit. Because I don't think I liked it. I didn't like it. I feel so sad. I'm really sad because, like I said, we've been on a great run, and I've been saying every single week on the podcast, like, not in a sense of I want Doctor Who to fail. It's very much, you know, I want Doctor Who to succeed. I want every Doctor Who episode of Doctor Who to be great. But there's always that fan element, and I think there's a little bit of a football fan element in me where it's like when Doctor Who's on a good run, I'm sort of like, okay, when are the wheels going to come off? When's the
when we're waiting?
Is it this week? Is this week going to be like? I'm like, I don't mind when it is. I just need to know when the run's going to end. But I don't know. It went on longer than I expected, and I was like, is this week going to be the week where the wheels come off for me? And I feel like it has been a bit. I mean, there's things that I like. There's things I don't like. We'll get into it.
This is what I find so interesting, I think, specifically about Doctor Who, is that with other shows, and it's true with Doctor Who as well to a certain extent, like, the general consensus is like, this one was good, this episode was bad, this was whatever. But specifically with like this season, with season 2, you can't, it's so interesting, you can't really equate what a good or bad episode is, because some people will love an episode of the show, and I think Lucky Day was our one where we were like, oh, I don't know how this one was, and everyone else seemed to like adore it. But then, like you were saying, so many people love this week's episode, and then other people like think it's the worst of the season, and it's just so interesting that like you can't pinpoint like this is a good one, this is a bad one, because it's just so different for like everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it also comes down a lot to like what bothers you in Doctor Who, because for me with Lucky Day, there was a lot of like what I perceived to be like technical issues with the storyline, or like things on screen that I was like, oh, that shouldn't quite say that, and oh, that doesn't quite make sense to me. And then I think in this week's episode, I was so kind of like lost in, for me, what's fun for me this week. This was like this had me like laughing enough that I was kind of just like, I was enjoying the ride. It was camp that landed in a way that wasn't cringe to me this week. But then I think a lot of people really felt that like the message was weak this week, and that that the politics were poor. And that's what people, I think, really focused on online, is that they sort of saying, well, if we interpret the message as this, then I really take issue with that. And I'm interested to know what you didn't like about it, genuinely.
I mean, I think you've covered one part there. And like I said, I usually go through the episode linearly, but I feel like I want to sort of cover this up front, is that I do think my biggest issue is the politics of the episode. I mean, I have complicated feelings on it, because you have to acknowledge, like before we recorded, Sam, you made a very good point about, TV landscape and how production works, and how this episode was in production probably 3 years ago now. We're looking 2 to 3 years ago. They started production on this episode. But I just think the politics and the messaging just feels messy. And I don't know, a lot of the arguments that are going on, I can see elements on both sides. But I think one of the key things that keeps getting brought up is obviously what we're talking about here is sort of the allegory for Israel and Palestine. There's obviously a big ongoing debate about that with Eurovision in real life, and linking this episode, those links are obviously going to be drawn. Yeah. And I think the episode is at times pushing you to make those links, and is pushing to at least allude to it in some aspects. And I just think it sort of, I don't know, trying to find a way to word this, it sort of toes a line down the middle when I feel like it could have picked its side. And I think we know what side the Doctor morally should really align with in this situation. And I think also there's arguments where it's like, well, the Doctor didn't know about certain aspects of the plot. The Doctor didn't find out, this person was going to commit a horrible act. But that's in the text, and that text has been written. That's my thing. Is it's not like the Doctor is reacting to a real scenario. The scenario has been built also, as well as the Doctor's reaction to it.
Yes, that makes sense.
And I agree with the points of they can't predict what's going to be happening a couple of years down the line, and they probably couldn't have predicted where we'd be literally this week with the atrocities that have been happening, what's been going on with Eurovision, and lining it up. Yeah. But I think there are things that could have been done personally. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone who's more educated in this could have helped me. There are things that could have been done in a post-production sense that would have tidied up the political messaging a little bit, made it a little bit less murky and a bit muddy. I would rather have had an episode that has a few dodgy edits and a bit of dodgy ADR to maybe try and align to something a bit stronger than something that doesn't aim for any stance on it. Yes. Or aims for, in some aspects, what I believe to be quite a dangerous stance on it. I'm interested to see what you two think. I know it's a bit of a deep topic to dive into straight away.
No,
I was sort of expecting to just talk about a bit of a silly Eurovision episode, and it's sort of taken me by surprise. So I don't know if you two are the same.
No, it definitely is the big discussion at the minute, and I think my feeling on watch was, yes, there is the production question. This was probably written maybe as far back as more than 2 years ago, but then it was probably filmed a year ago, when I think the calls for a boycott of Eurovision have been a lot stronger. But also that there's been a really active conversation about Israel's participation in Eurovision since at least 2019. I think it's been a really big topic anyway. So in any case, it probably should have been written with the potential for that allegory to be pulled out in mind anyway. And it's also strange because I think in this era, the political messaging has not been subtle. Like, there's always been a really obvious smack you over the head message in a lot of these episodes. So it's strange that people have been able to kind of, I guess, interpret this episode in so many different directions. And I think we know the writers' views as well on this are pro-Palestine. So what's kind of happened behind the scenes is curious. I read it to be that this was intended as a bit more of a general kind of corporate colonial exploitation is bad message than it was meant to be any kind of direct reference to any real world states. And I think hence they were trying to make kind of the corporation is the villain in a kind of very general the corporation kind of sense. And rather than there was another kind of state taking part in the competition who was the threat or anything like that. But I think, unfortunately, they can't really avoid that comparison being the obvious thing. The obvious thing that people can draw from this, and that I think felt immediately clear, was kind of like that there's an expression of the right way to respond to your Homeland being burnt and destroyed and your people being killed, which was to respond with peace and open your heart and sing a good song and kind of do it the dignified way, and that there was kind of a right and a wrong way to respond, and that they made kind of the antagonist such like a cartoon villain to, want to murder 3 trillion people. I think the way it was meant to be then positioned, sorry Sam, I'm steamrolling this. I think the way that it was meant to be positioned in the episode as well was that perhaps, I've forgotten the name of the actual the villain, the Freddy Fox villain. In my head I'm like, Freddy Fox?
Kid, I think, isn't it?
Kid, yes, Kid, that's right.
Yeah.
Baby goat? No. Kid, like his mother was killed in front of him. Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Stepped him out on Belinda. But I think it was almost like the Doctor was saying, like, yeah, you may think you have a cause, but for you, I know you and you're a killer looking for a cause. Like, you just wanted a reason to lash out, whether or not that's true. And then people have also read that to mean like, oh, well, in this case, this could be kind of a portrayal of any freedom fighter who has, any kind of a violent struggle for their cause, and that it kind of mocks them and makes it seem that any violence is always wrong in every situation. And that's what kind of the message of the story was. I don't know about that. I think I didn't read it to be intended as an allegory for any current real world conflict, but I think they've walked right into the fact that it is the biggest conversation surrounding Eurovision this year, and this is clearly the Eurovision episode, So
yeah, for me, I think it's interesting what you were saying, Arthur, about Freddie Fox's character kind of being a cartoon character, because what has happened quite a lot in this era and in Doctor Who in general, and some of my favourite Doctor Who, is when the villain is coming at the story from an angle where you can empathise with their reasons for doing things, like when you learn their backstory. What often happens, and I think it happened really well in the story in The Engine, is you end that episode kind of feeling like you understand the villain and that there's no real villain here. And it's interesting in this episode that they lent so much into like the cartoonization, if you want to call it that, of this is the bad guy, this is the good guy. Like you said, this is the dignified way of doing things, this is the quote-unquote non-dignified way of doing things. And I think there's a really interesting story that they started there with the whole goat thing, where, you see their horns and people associate that with the devil and evil, and that's why people hate this species so much. And what they really are is similar to a goat, like a harmless little animal. And I think that there is a storyline there that they could have explored that they kind of skirted away from, and instead lent into like the angry Doctor, the dark Doctor. And there's interesting story to happen there. I really like the storyline with Belinda where she sees the Doctor sort of show his true colours in a way. Like that, she said, I don't know who this person is. And we as the audience have seen the Doctor do that many times. And that's the direction they chose to go in it. And I thought that was interesting to have this villain that does have a deep backstory that you understand why they're doing what they're doing. But they decided not to go with the understanding route. It was like, they villain, they goodie. And it's not as black and white as that.
Yeah, that's my issue, is that especially when, the corporation are there and sort of named as a villain, but there's no representative to be had there. There's no repercussions really that we see as a viewer for the corporation. So really what we have as a primary antagonist is Kid. And that's where my issues lie, in that I like seeing the Doctor go dark. I don't mind seeing the Doctor do things that are deemed to be out of character for the Doctor. The Time Lord victorious and things like that, we've seen it before. That isn't something that is naturally in character for the Doctor, and I think it's fine to take the Doctor to places that are out of character. But the lack of repercussions for that is where I draw issue.
Yeah.
I would have been able to find something in it if Belinda, who I think, again, was set up at the beginning of the series to challenge the Doctor and to say, you are dangerous, you are not safe, I don't want to be one of your adventures. I understand that, they've connected over the series, and maybe Belinda has softened on the Doctor and the Doctor's approach. But Belinda seeing that and then embracing the Doctor felt like it didn't sit right with me. Yeah. Like if you're not going to have the Doctor do the Doctor things, in terms of what we always see from the Doctor is trying to understand these people's point of view. And I think this week would have been more important to have seen that than any other week, because you've given us so much context as to why Kid is doing this, and as to the atrocities that have been committed to him and his people. To then have the Doctor go that far fine. You can do that and then have the Doctor challenged on that, and have Belinda. Maybe if when the Doctor goes up to Belinda recoils. That would take it to a level of, okay, now Belinda is the Doctor standing at this point, and the Doctor has gone too far, and Belinda can pull the Doctor back from that, and make the Doctor realise that the Doctor needs to listen. And that's again where the cartoony level of 3 trillion people is like. I mean, if it was a more self-contained story, and we're talking about just the Harmony Arena, it becomes much less cartoony, much more personal, and much closer to the action. And then you're dealing with a much more nuanced story, where I feel like if you add on all of these big Doctor Who villain sort of stereotypes, it's like the kind of thing that someone who doesn't watch Doctor Who would think a Doctor Who villain would do. It's like, this person's got this delta wave and they're gonna kill 3 trillion people. Like, it's over the top, but in a way that harms the story, in my opinion, and harms really the characterization of the Doctor, in my opinion.
There's a world in which they could have gone full no villain route on a rewrite, and basically decide that due to essentially a solar flare or a glitch, the roof malfunctions and everyone is sucked into space, and it's down to the Doctor and Belinda and a few surviving fans to work out how to seal it and get everyone back before time runs out and everyone freezes to death. And that it probably becomes a slightly, well, you remove pretty much all the controversy from the story right away, but then you probably also suck out the opportunity for the Doctor to do the kind of Doctor Go Dark thing. But I think you're right in that it feels like they've introduced a huge political topic and haven't given it enough time to really commit to it and explore it properly. And I think coming off the back of, I keep flagging Andor, but only because Andor was on at the same time as Doctor Who as well, and it's all on Disney Plus. And Andor is some of the most like moving and important television I've seen in like my life. Like, it's
both starring Farida Sethu.
Both, Sam Barrett both. And like it is, by the way, I think like absolutely worth the hype. Like it's astonishing television. Like the depth of writing they've done in that is incredible. And I think I've been so spoiled with the depth of political storytelling they do in that, and the moral questions it's constantly asking itself through that as well, that by the time I get to Doctor Who, I think I've stopped expecting it. By the time I get to Doctor Who, I'm like, all right, here we go, like space Eurovision and confetti cannons, let's do it, because I'm almost like, I almost want to see Doctor Who do what it can do and what Doctor Who can only do, which is like Rylan on a tractor beam. Like, that's where I start giggling, is because I'm like, well, that's what Doctor Who does well. Like, yes, sometimes I also think like Doctor Who can do both. In this episode, I think it was a great example of one where it really, really suffers from the 45-minute runtime, because Andor's benefit from setting something up over 2 series and having this, like loads of time to really have this like slow burn where, you get a lot of depth to all these characters and their motivations, and but it's not a strong story from that perspective at all. In terms of the message this week is it's shallow. It's definitely shallow.
Yeah,
I think there's a really interesting version of this episode that could have existed. Like, to bounce off your idea, Alasdair, I'm kind of thinking about like The Long Game in Series 1, 2005, where there's the company who put on the Interstellar Song Contest, and they perhaps, like you said about solar flare, and if that accidentally malfunctioned, what if it's that they were cutting corners with the way that they built this station, and then there's like an editor character, like the man, and that's the quote-unquote villain of the episode, and because of a malfunction or something, then that lets them all out, and the story becomes the Doctor and Belinda and a few survivors trying to stop them freezing, while also trying to get, I'm thinking like what's the name of the guy from The Voyage of the Dan? Rickson, the guy who is
Max Capricorn.
Max Capricorn, where he's like, oh well, I don't care, I'm just doing this because I'm making money off of this and whatever. And then you have a story there about the Doctor. You can still have Dark Doctor, but against the representative of the company, and then the company become the villain, which at its root, this episode is that the company is the villain. But then I think with a 45-minute runtime, you have a bit of a clearer stance on where our anger for the situation is going. It is the company's fault for what they are doing, that these people are now in danger. And I think that could have been a way to make it slightly less messy, I guess. You've used that word.
To turn it into the corporate greed story instead of the genocide story, and I think not commit properly to to exploring that in enough depth.
Well, I think there is something to say as well, is that, you know, we do have 2 more episodes. There is a chance maybe the corporation side of things maybe gets revisited. I don't know if Kid is lined up to be in the finale. I mean, if he is, then we've got a lot to deal with in 2 episodes. Mm-hmm. But I think, it felt messy. I feel like if you want to do that story, like you said, you have to give it the time. And sometimes Doctor Who in 45 minutes does not have the time to delve into all of the nuances, whilst also doing all the fun stuff that it wants to do as a Doctor Who episode.
Yeah.
And it's just trying to balance that. And I think you made a really important point about intention. I don't want to assume any intention from the production team, because I think, like I said, giving them benefit of the doubt, I think it coming across as messy is what I'm levelling at it, and I don't think the intentions were there to go this intense over to one side.
Yeah.
But when it comes to intentions of a writer, as soon as that work is out in the world, the intentions of the writer, frankly, don't mean anything anymore, because it's the interpretation of the viewer that's important. And, you know, there's obviously a lot of discourse about it and a lot of people arguing about it. But what I will say is that you can't, whatever you think personally about the episode, is that you can't just discredit someone else's interpretation of the episode and how they saw it. And that goes both ways, because also I have to acknowledge that because I have the podcast, because I want to write myself, I have very in-depth analyses on Doctor Who episodes. A lot of people don't watch Doctor Who like that. And a lot of people just watch Doctor Who for silly monsters, switch their brain off, and if they do learn something, and if there is some political messaging that they do pick up, it's a bonus. So if they interpreted the episode like that, and they enjoyed it, and they had fun, then that's their interpretation, that's how their brain processed it. And I just didn't process it that way. Other people didn't. And I think if enough people interpreted it in this way, in terms of the messy politics, that's something I feel like, even though maybe we're looking at a production team who are having to look this far in advance, that's the perils of recording and shooting and filming and creating these episodes 2 years ahead of schedule. But there should have been some foresight in the past couple of years in post-production to maybe go, are there things that we can tweak here to make this not get across? You know, it's an experienced production team, and I would have hoped that things like this may have been picked up before the episode is released.
They did that, as in Disney, not the BBC, with allegedly did that with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show they did, because when they started doing Marvel shows, they were going to release that first, and they pushed it in the schedule, because what is widely believed to be true is that the episode was going to be about someone letting out a global pandemic, and then lo and behold, they were going to air it in 2020. So they'd already filmed the whole thing. So like you say, they couldn't edit, they couldn't film more footage. But with ADR and changes, they then amended what that plot was, because they were like, oh, this actually isn't what should be coming out at this time. Let's try and switch it around. So it is interesting to see how they came to there was. I wonder what the original script was. Well, like, is this literally the script that they originally came to? Were there changes that we even don't know happen? Like, there might have been more changes that to the episode that we don't know, because we obviously saw what was broadcast. But yeah, it's interesting to see. I'd be interested. I'm watching the Unleashed this episode, really interesting, and seeing like the process for how they made this episode.
I think, being generous, my interpretation is that it was written as a love letter to Eurovision, and with that, I think tries to celebrate what are supposed to be those kind of core tenets of Eurovision, which is supposed to be kind of the unifying power of song and love and peace. And obviously, the boycotts this year and last year are about the fact that people perceive that to be quite hollow because of the participation of certain sponsors and certain states that are allowed to participate in that as well. So, yes, I don't think it hit that message well. I think in the context of real Eurovision and a real boycott and a real conversation happening around it, I think I was also willing to allow Doctor Who to try and separate itself from that, and so maybe that's also where I was enjoying it as its own story and not reading it as a direct allegory, was that I also wanted almost like a Eurovision alternative this year to enjoy. And when it wasn't too direct in every sense, then I thought, okay, this is okay because I can enjoy other parts of this that kind of celebrate what Eurovision can be and what it can represent, and it can kind of nail some of those parts of that love letter well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why, because we've not done like viewing parties for this season, but that's why I'm glad that I watched this episode with a group of people, because personally for me, not to get real on the pod, I was never really into Eurovision anyway, so I didn't feel like I was massively losing something. But what was really nice is that a lot of people who attended this viewing party who were boycotting Eurovision, we got to have a night where they were celebrating what Eurovision, I think, quote unquote, should be and what they get out of it with
Absolutely.
Doctor Who. So I'm really glad, like, I did enjoy the episode overall, and I'm really glad that we got an episode that allowed people who were boycotting to have a moment where they could congregate and enjoy something that celebrates what I think the show is meant to be. And I'm grateful that we got that out of it. And it is interesting because, like, when they announced that we were going to get a Eurovision episode, I was like, oh, this is just going to be like silly camp fun. And it was, and we'll dive into the silly camp fun. But I was surprised how much they lent into the political messages in an episode about Eurovision, like you said, where conversations have been going on about whether certain contestants should compete years before this story was written.
Yeah. And I think from that point of view, I like that as a love letter to, as you said, what Eurovision should be. And I think it really worked. I think there's some really nice moments, just to come sort of away from the political points for a bit. Like, even though it's not the best timing for a homage to Eurovision, I think all of that stuff is funny and well handled, and it's things that we recognise, you know, like presenters having to improvise live on air because of technical errors, and having Rylan and Graham Norton there, which we'll get into Rylan, one of my highlights of the episode. I can't believe I'm saying those words, but having like, and the cheesy mad song, like the songs are good, and like especially after last series, I think you know, a twist at the end, it's fun. It's a bit naff, you know, in places, but it's fun. But I actually think like the two, I mean, again, we'll get onto Dugadoo, but the other two songs were actually really great songs, and I thought they were like, this is the kind of thing you would imagine to be on Space Eurovision. And really, really nicely produced. I think, as a love letter to what Eurovision should be, I think that's a really nice way of putting it. I did enjoy that aspect of it, definitely.
Yeah. And I really liked as well that they, just like in the behind the scenes thing, Christina Rotondo, who voiced the Goblin Queen, Janice Goblin, she came back to the show to play one of the contestants who was singing the one that was white with covered in all the red spots. And it's just so nice that she got her moment as well on screen in an episode that is celebrating song and music. And that made me so happy. I'm not gonna lie, I had no idea that was her when I watched it with all the prosthetics. But it's so fun seeing that.
Have you had Christina on WHOLALA?
We have.
Yeah, on WHOLALA.
That's lovely.
Christina
that's
is
very, very nice.
an absolute babe. We love Christina.
Yes.
Yeah, I was texting her afterwards and I was like, "Is this you?" And she was like, "That's me." And I was like, "Oh my god."
But I mean, Rylan, the cold open.
The cold open, oh
really
my
fun.
God.
And I was like, okay, this is a funny concept. Like Rylan being in cryogenic sleep, and just being woken up for Eurovision every year is really funny. And I had a thought while I was watching it. I was like, if you'd have told me that the guy who sang Kissing You by Desiree on X Factor terribly 12 years ago would be like one of my highlights in an episode of Doctor Who, which, spoiler alert, also features Susan Foreman. It's just sort of these moments where you have to pinch yourself when it comes to Doctor Who and be like, how is this show real?
Carol Ann Ford and Rylan,
and it's the only show that can do that.
It is the only show that can do Rylan and Susan in the same episode.
Spoiler alert, Rylan and the Rani. Rylan and the
Rani. Yeah. I mean, if you've got this deep and you're worried about spoilers, I mean, you probably should have watched the episode by now. Let's be honest.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny that Susan's name is never mentioned and Rylan's name is mentioned about 20 times, but yes, the cold open like immediately gave me, I think, a lot of confidence in the way the story was going to be done, because I mean, like I've said before, like Juno Dawson, I think, is a really great writer, and I enjoyed Redacted a lot, and immediately this said to me like Juno can write funny, And I think what Doctor Who has desperately needed for a while for me is like some laugh out loud humor, because what this episode I think does quite well is it does the very dark, and it does it alongside an immediate punchline that actually had me like really giggling. And a lot of Doctor Who I can do a bit of a like eye roll, like, all right, that was quite funny. This one just had me laughing. So as soon as it was like, all right, babe, what's the year? I was like, oh my God, immediately funny. Just the kind of like strut. We knew who it is.
Has the teeth.
Yeah, has the teeth. Dazzling.
Has the teeth. Yeah.
And it's like, all right, Rylan, give me some ore. Oh. I was like, no, ore. AWE. Oh. All of that was...
Isn't it awesome?
Isn't it awesome? Here at the Harmony Arena. Always fantastic. And then at the end, again, another cameo, having Graham Norton be the one to be almost this harbinger of doom for the end.
Yeah.
It was like... And also Graham Norton being in it when Graham Norton has ruined so many episodes of Doctor Who by mistake.
I've got that written down in my notes. That Graham Norton having an in-universe interruption rather than an out-of-universe interruption to Doctor Who.
And then
it's very funny.
So
acknowledging it in Unleashed as well, doing a whole segment to explain, like, oh, it was terrible. They brought back Doctor Who, and it was Rose going downstairs with all the albums, and they were like, oh, that's clever. You can hear her listen to Graham Norton.
Well, they wrote it in the book because obviously they made the mess up in the novelization of Rose. They've written into it that she's listening to Graham Norton.
Graham Norton's in the background.
And he was like, I could have said anything. I could have sworn.
And that's like, I now wonder, because I missed like the start of Rose. Rose is my first ever episode of Doctor Who. So there is a chance that the first voice I ever heard on Doctor Who might have been Graham Norton.
Yeah.
Because that's about when I turned the telly on to watch Doctor Who for the first time ever.
So
Graham
good.
Norton might have been my introduction to Doctor Who. And now he's a hologram.
Now he's sold his rights in perpetuity.
Oopsie, sad face.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. The humor is great. This episode, I do think they do nail the humor. Gary and Mike as well. I had a lot of fun with Gary and Mike.
Them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As side characters, I really connected with them. Usually, side characters on Who I find are quite disposable characters. If I'm really honest, it's quite rare that I feel like there's one that I'm like, oh, I've really liked you and I'd like you back. But those two were really fun and really competent and really kicked into life really quickly to obviously they serve a very obvious narrative purpose. Like, oh, how convenient. One's a nurse and one's a great computer hacker who can make holograms. But nonetheless, like I thought their subplot was going to be them just kind of bumbling around, following Belinda and following the Doctor and not offering much except kind of... Because the preview given was that they were kind of going through some marital problems or something while they're attending. And I thought that was just going to be their whole story, was just them kind of like... learning to love each other again through the contest. But actually there was a bit more to it, and a bit more like, oh, I've never seen you at work, and so, well, I never want you to because you'd be very sick and we don't want that. And there was something very natural about the way they interacted. I felt like they actually had a very good chemistry as well. And then the two of them kind of fawning over the 15th Doctor with that, I'd do anything for you. I was like, this is very real.
Get in line.
This is get in line. I was like, yeah, this is a lot of gay people I know. And of course, it had to be, as part of that kind of love letter to Eurovision, there had to be the Eurovision couple, like the gay guys who got together over this is their thing. This is
and like one gets it and the other doesn't.
100%. So they were really fun to me. They were really good side characters.
It was really sweet, the line, like actually very like touching and real, I think. The bit where he was like, oh, it's just music, it's just songs, why'd you care? And he was like, no, because I care, and if you're making fun of that, it feels like making fun of me, because I know so many people like that when it comes to shows like Eurovision. Like what could have felt like, we were saying earlier about like a cartoon character, what could have felt like a caricature of Eurovision fans.
Yeah.
It felt very honest, and I felt the same with the Doctor Who fans from Lux. Like,
that's a nice comparison.
Yeah, it can be so easy to like poke fun at them in a nasty way and make them into a caricature, but they were very believably the people that they were. And like you said, Alasdair, I enjoyed that they were funny, that I wanted to see more of them, but also that they were very competent and they were there to help the team. And I thought that was really, really good. And I liked, I mean, we'll get onto it later, I'm sure, and I have thoughts outside of them two, but them interacting with Mrs. Flood was quite funny, I thought.
I'm glad they survived that interaction.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, and I think the performances as well is something that I want to highlight. I think while I have issues with the text and what it's going for at a ground level, I think in terms of how it's performed as well as it could be. I really like Freddie Fox's kid. I think his performance is really engaging, And I think Ncuti does some, like I said, even though I'm not a fan of what they do with the Dark Doctor stuff, I'm enjoying seeing a bit more range from Ncuti this series in terms of what he can do and how good he is at the anger, because you don't see much of it in season 1, and really since in the past few episodes we've seen a lot of darkness and a lot of anger there. And yeah, I've seen a few people being a bit snuffy about Belinda's role in this, and it didn't stand out to me as a major issue. And I think Vera Sethe is still really engaging on screen. I love watching her. They're the two key things that have sort of driven me through this whole series. That I love those two as a dynamic.
I really connected with Belinda on this episode. I thought the scene where she was convinced the Doctor was dead, the TARDIS is gone, and when she was talking to the contestant and she had that like mini breakdown, she was like, "Where am I?" And she was like, "You're in this planet, but where's that? You're in the system, but where's that in the?" And she's like, "Where is that? I don't know where I am. I can't get anywhere." And that little breakdown felt so real to me and really connected with her. And like we were saying earlier, I do wish, and I understand that she softened the Doctor when she saw him behave like that, Dark Doctor, and she was really taken aback. I wish she had been a bit more like, I wish she'd been written, I guess, a bit more like Rose was in Dalek, where she has to kind of stop the Doctor. The Doctor stops because he sees her. But if she like kept him at a bit of an arm's length and was like, "Okay, I didn't know this element of you existed. That's disconcerting to me. Please get me home." But she clearly by this point loves traveling with the Doctor, and she's grown to love the Doctor. So I understand that. But I felt like it's. I like when they separate Doctor and companion. Like that Belinda had her own B plot in this.
Yeah, I also really liked her role as just someone who has been caught up in all this and is terrified. Like she's also just a victim of what's happening here. And I don't always need her to be the one who saves the day. I don't think the companion always has to be the one to save the day. I think sometimes they can just ground us and they can be our way in. And I like then that she was able to actually, like Sam said, have a panic attack. Like one of my highlights of RTD1 is that Rose's reaction when she first enters the TARDIS is just to cry. Because it's like, this is actually horrible and it's completely changed my worldview and it's terrifying. Like, this shouldn't be possible. And it's just changed my life in the worst way because now I need to reframe everything and I'm freaking out and I'm not sure what's real life. Is my boyfriend dead? And so there being a moment of like, well, my way home's gone. The driver's dead. I don't know where I am or who you are. I don't know how, when there's a moment like that, same as like in The Impossible Planet, Satan Plit, where the Doctor and Rose really think they're stuck there and they're like, what are we going to do? Where are we going to live? You're going to have to get a mortgage. I quite like those grounding moments of like, I'm stuck and that's terrifying. And so I like that. However, yes, I agree. I think Belinda was oddly okay with the Dark Doctor kind of punching this guy on the floor.
Yeah.
And that's not good because I think ever since Lux, which is really, really early in the season, Belinda decided she trusted the Doctor and all of that, tension about you're dangerous has evaporated and I don't know where it went. And either that needs to come back in quite a big way for the finale, but I fear it won't. Or they should have really let that go on a bit longer, I think. I don't see the Doctor has done enough yet to reassure her, I think, that he's not dangerous to be with.
I agree. Yeah, I think that was one of the things that I highlighted back when we covered episode 1 with Molly Martian from Galactic Area. We sort of discussed how refreshing it was to see a companion challenge the Doctor in this way and have this different dynamic. And that is, and again, another one of my issues with where the series has gone is that while there's elements of it, I don't think it's carried through as strongly as I would have liked from sort of the Robot Revolution and Lux, in that I think there are things that I understand that, you can make the argument that Belinda's more settled with the Doctor now. Belinda is sort of feeling a little bit calmer in the Doctor's presence, but I feel like the situations that they're in doesn't really earn that. I think, they've been in increasingly more dangerous scenarios. So I feel like maybe, especially this episode in particular, like I said before, is one where I really would have liked. It doesn't have to be a big grand speech from Belinda to the Doctor. It just has to be moments of apprehension and tension towards the Doctor, given what she's just seen him do.
Yeah.
The lack of acknowledgement after the fact as well of the risk of staying there. I know Belinda is sort of partakes in that and wants to stay and wants to watch the show, but the Doctor needs to get Belinda home, and Belinda has sort of been swept up a bit too much.
Yeah.
And they need to sort of remember that the task is to get Belinda home.
Yeah.
So I feel like I would have liked Belinda to maybe challenge more, like, are you actually going to get me home? Or are we now just doing this? Are we hopping from place to place?
Yeah.
I mean, it maybe this is something that's literally only just popped into my head. I mean, maybe it would have been a bit of a different way to take the series in terms of seeing a darker side of the Doctor. Maybe the Doctor could have gotten Belinda home a bit easier, but has maybe taken a bit of a longer route than he could have done, because maybe he's enjoying Belinda's company and feels lonely and wants someone there. Yeah. Maybe it would have been interesting to have, because that's quite a first Doctor quality in, like, we see it back in the Daleks when the Doctor purposefully gets them trapped on Skaro because the Doctor wants to explore, but a modern Doctor would want to spend time with a human. That's the development that the Doctor has been on over the past 60 years. I think that would have been an interesting way to, and then maybe if Belinda finds out, that adds to some real tension of, oh my God, you could have got me home and you've put my planet at risk because you wanted to go off and have silly adventures with me. That would have been an interesting way to take it.
There's a really interesting moment, I think, at the end of the Robot Revolution, and he's kind of schmoozing Belinda and she's going along with it. And then she suddenly says, "No, Doctor, you're dangerous." Mm-hmm. And Ncuti just gives this incredible performance of, like, smiling through this, and you can see the cracks in the Doctor where he's realizing it's not working.
Yeah.
And I do love the idea that you could have bookended the season with her saying, "I'm not one of your adventures," and then he kind of, like, takes the autonomy away from her and makes her one of his adventures. And I think there is a story about the Doctor losing Ruby and losing someone he considered to be like family, and just wanting to hold on to that feeling. Mm-hmm. And then, like you said, you could have had the reveal of Belinda realizing that maybe, like, I don't know, the Vindicator's actually messing with the TARDIS, and he could have gotten home all along. That I don't know what that makes the Doctor. Like, it would be a ballsy move to do make the Doctor the villain, but there definitely is an interesting story to be had there.
Yeah. I agree. I think that would have been great. I think the tension needed to go on longer. I really like this idea that the Doctor's been a little bit more deceptive than is let on about either how many readings are needed. Could have hit that limit 3 episodes ago, and actually ever since then has just been bonus adventures.
Yeah.
Or indeed go a little bit end of time with it and decide that actually the Doctor in then delaying has caused the 25th of May. Because had they gone around a little bit quicker, they would have been there soon enough to actually fix the problem. And in dallying, there is now a bigger problem. So something like that would have been good. I'm not sure now how Belinda's going to kind of, I mean, maybe she won't, but if she was to bow out of the series at this point, I mean, I guess she'll be a little conflicted between the travelling that she's starting to enjoy and the home that she's wanting to come back to. My theory, though unsupported, is probably that, there's been rumours about whether Millie Gibson was originally meant to have a bigger role in season 2 as Ruby, and whether that was reduced late. And I do think a lot of episodes in this season do feel like they would have been absolutely fine just with Ruby instead of Belinda in them, and that there have been a couple of extra lines to kind of add in the Vindicator reading or whatever. But if you take the Vindicator out of it and just call it a random landing, they work fine as a Ruby story. And it almost feels like there's a few maybe stories that were originally written for a different companion that they haven't updated to fit Belinda more than they fit Ruby. And there's something even in this story about kind of like, oh, I never got a chance to tell you how marvelous I think you are. And I was kind of thinking that always works well for Ruby more than it works for Belinda necessarily. But works for both. So my suspicion is that there was maybe an original plan to write it with a different companion in mind, and that not all the lines and the tension were kind of updated to reflect. But then Ruby 2 should have really had more of an issue with the Dark Doctor, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. I mean, like I said, for an episode that I didn't entirely like, there's still a lot of interesting discussion to be had. Obviously, we've delved into that, but I think there's 2 rather large elephants in the room that we have basically avoided.
Maybe even 3.
Yes. I've really got to try and avoid looking like a grumpy old man here.
No,
I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. Look, let's start with Susan.
Oh, yes, let's start, yeah.
Susan's back.
When you said 2 elephants, I thought you meant a bi-generation.
Well,
3 elephants.
Well, now we've basically got a herd of elephants in the room. Let's be honest.
Unholy trinity of elephants.
Yeah. Susan. Let's start with Susan.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw to you two first. Sam, you how do you feel about the return of Susan Foreman?
So I have thoughts.
Yes.
I'm very excited Susan's back. I don't think this was how the reveal of it should have gone. So I have been wanting Susan back in the show for donkey's years, as everyone has, for elephant years, let's say. And I kind of could see that this was where they were going. She was mentioned a lot last season. We kind of tease, maybe Susan Triad is Susan. No, it's not. Like, we kind of could see it going in this direction. But I feel like we were almost robbed of an, oh my God, the Doctor's has just seen Susan moment, where the way that I would have done it in this episode is the Doctor's freezing in air, and then you hear her voice. You just hear a woman's voice. You're not even sure who it is. Like, please, no, wake up, go. And then you maybe pan in on Shooty with his eyes shut, and you just hear grandfather. And then he opens, and there's like, and then we as the audience like, wait, hold on, what was that? Let me skip back. Was that Susan? Is that just dialogue from the 60s? Is that new? What's going on? I think this dream state footage of her in the TARDIS was an odd way to do it, because now we can all assume Susan will be in the finale, but I feel like we're almost robbed of that, oh my God, it's Susan moment, where we could have just had it teased in a way. The way that I hope they're doing it is she's trying to connect with the Doctor through contact, because we never really see what that looks like with the Doctor when he's like contact to other Time Lords. And I like the idea that this isn't just some random apparition in his head. It's Susan actually trying to get through to the Doctor.
Yeah.
So if that's the way it's explained, I think it will soften the blow for me. But it kind of dampened my excitement a bit, because I was like, it's Susan, but she's actually not back. That's not Susan. That's just in his head.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Yeah. Alasdair, well, how do you feel about Susan returning?
I was watching on my own, which was so disappointing compared to, I think, how it would have been to watch it with some fans or in a group. So I just kind of by myself. I see, maybe I'm a bit too much of a sucker for like fan service and Doctor Who and just going, oh my God, Susan. Because I think my concern was that they just were going to leave it so long that they just missed the opportunity to do it at all. And I was getting worried that it was set up so much in season 1 it didn't come to anything. And then by this point in season 2, I actually forgot that Susan was referenced in series 1, because the Doctor hasn't really talked about his family with Belinda, which is funny, because one of the outcomes of like, Ruby Sunday, you changed my life, I talk about my family in a way I never used to. But in all these conversations with Belinda about her family, he hasn't actually returned any stories about his. Nonetheless, I think I'm reading it as like a contact thing. I think she is, she's present and she's reaching him and she can see what he's doing. Because I think these moments of like, stop, no, grandfather, stop, feels like more than conscience. It feels like to me that she is somewhere and trying to reach him, either from her own TARDIS or the future, or something's going on. So I'm happy to have her in this. I think Sam's idea is nice. I think the idea that we could have seeded this a little bit earlier in the season, there could have been some clues peppered throughout, maybe voices where, you know, there's no credit for Carol Ann Ford. Perhaps there's just like a hint that it might be her, and we're agonizing over the footage to work out, like, was that her or not? Is it a new actress? Is it a recast? Like, I think would have been nice, and then a confirmation, like, no, it's her. Yes, I think I'm glad to have her at all. I think while we can do it.
You don't like it.
It's a hot take.
You don't like it. Let's get real on the pod.
I've said for years, I don't like the idea of Susan coming back.
Really?
Dun dun dun.
I don't think I've ever really. I think years ago I would have been up for it, but I think, I don't know, it depends how you read it, and it's just like we said before about people's different interpretations of Doctor Who. I've always felt quite passionately that Susan's exit, I've always read it as that when the Doctor is saying that speech, it's comforting Susan, but the Doctor knows that he's never going to go back for Susan, because I have always loved that reading of it, because it's like the Doctor is saying what Susan knows the Doctor's never going to go back. The Doctor knows the Doctor's never going to go back. this is the last time they're going to see each other, but they're comforting each other and sort of playing along with the role anyway.
Yeah.
That's how I've always
That's
seen
nice.
it, in that, and I also see that as basically the inciting incident for the next 60 years of Doctor Who. From there, the Doctor really kicks on into, I think, meeting Ian and Barbara and then losing Susan are the two inciting incidents that turn the Doctor into the Doctor,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's where the character development comes from, to go, maybe I'm plastering that on with my own interpretation, but that's just how I've always felt.
It's a nice one, though.
Yeah, I've always felt like that. And I've always felt quite passionately then that also as well, Susan as a character in Classic Who is not my favourite, in terms of that. I think she could have been done so much better. And maybe that's a good element of this, is that maybe we will then get, some good interpretation of Susan that goes back to sort of what I loved about her in An Unearthly Child, and then sort of gets lost as she becomes a bit of a damsel in distress week on week in each story, and sort of loses a bit of that depth that we initially had. I'd be happy if that happens. If it happens, and if Susan's back and we get some really good stuff with Susan, then I'll be happy. And also another side of things that I want to talk about is that two different things. While I'm not as happy and excited that Susan's back, I am so happy Carol Ann Ford is back. I think if they were going to do it, at least get Carol Ann Ford back in. I think that's a lovely nod to her. I think, it's 61 years since she left now. And, she's come back once in the Five Doctors and didn't really get anything to do in that. She was basically just hanging around for a bit. But spoilers for a 40-year-old story of Doctor Who there, sorry. I love the fact that Carol Ann Ford's back. I'm with Sam on the execution. I think it would have been a nicer, slow tease.
Yeah.
But there's also people discussing, either way, if she's in the finale, you've sort of pulled the trigger a little bit to her. It's like shouting surprise at a surprise party when the wrong person walks in, and then the right person walks in, and it's like, well, we've used all that energy now in the last episode, and now when she pops up again, it's like, okay, yeah, we expected. But also, if she's now not in the finale, where do we go from there? Because it's like, if she's not in these next two episodes, which there is a possibility that she's not, because there's a different story. There's a lot of different stories that we need to wrap up and finish and tell in what is less than 2 hours now. If Susan doesn't pop up and doesn't play a role, that's a weird one as well. Because now it's like you've now made people anticipate that she's going to be in the next two episodes. And then if she isn't, that's going to fall flat. So I feel like it's a bit of a lose-lose situation in terms of the way they've revealed her. But look, I am happy for people who are happy. I wish I wasn't a grumpy little bastard
that's
about
fair
it.
enough.
Like I say, it's just been one of my little things. I'm like, because I was so confident that the boat had passed and the ship had sailed. The boat had passed. Ship had sailed is definitely the more used term there, Josh. And I thought the ship had sailed, so I was quite confident in saying, I don't think she should come back. And now they've done it sort of at the last chance saloon. But I hope it proves me wrong. I hope they do good stuff with her.
Yeah.
And if they do, I'll be excited.
I imagine I mean, listen, we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That could have been all the Susan we get. And if it is, that would be very sad. I do think she'll be in the finale. I know I keep banging on about Unleashed. They were interviewing her, and what she was wearing did not look like an outfit Carol Ann Ford would choose to wear.
That's good.
It looked like something that could be a costume. So I have optimism that she'll be back. What I'm obsessed with is, for both Susan and the Rani, Stefan Powell's like, they haven't been seen on screen since the early 1990s when they were in Dimensions in Time. And by that, I am taking it for truth that Dimensions in Time is now canonically the last appearance of the Rani and Susan.
I am fully expecting them to canonize Dimensions in Time next week.
But like last time I saw you, we were in a pub in the East End.
Yeah, exactly. I'm worried the entire mission statement of R2D2 was just a smokescreen to canonize Dimensions in Time. Is that where we are?
Yes.
But I always think this as well with like when they brought back Sarah Jane, like she was also in Dimensions in Time, but also in like the Five Doctors, they kind of picked her story up from where they dropped her off in Aberdeen. And so I kind of feel like with Susan, I'm like, the Five Doctors happened. Like the 11th Doctor took the seal from the death zone that the Master stole and put it on handles.
Yeah.
So we know the Five Doctors happened. Is the Doctor going to be like, oh my God, Susan, I left you all those years ago? Or are they going to be like, remember when we were in the death zone? Do you remember that? Like, are they going to talk about it?
That is not compatible. Yeah, let's imagine they had a memory wipe at the end of that or something. Let's not worry too much.
That's probably the safest way.
Let's
to
do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. What about the other two elephants in the room?
Oh no, I've
Do we-
got to do this.
Yeah.
I feel right. I'll go the Rani. I think I've said on every episode of this podcast so far this series, oh God, she's going to be the Rani, isn't she?
I think
She was the Rani, wasn't she?
Yeah.
So-
The thing what you said about the Rani is, like, we did go back and we did watch a few Rani episodes, and we watched them in some detail. I think there's one we're still missing. There's one we haven't done of the 3 appearances.
I think we watched Mark and we haven't watched
We did
Time.
Mark, didn't watch Time, and then we watched Dimensions in Time. And
See, I've not seen Dimensions in Time, which is quite. I know that's
Oh.
shameful as a Doctor Who fan.
It only takes you 15
I've
minutes.
never experienced it. But it's
Very
15
quick.
minutes I'll never get back.
Yes, it is.
That's the problem.
You feel quite dizzy and ill by the end of it. Seriously, it's quite disorienting.
Yeah.
But there wasn't. I mean, in Mrs. Flood, I think we were like, if it is the Rani, we're like, there's no clues here. As in, there's nothing Rani-ish about her at all. And when she said things like, in the Empire of Death, tell your maker I'm coming to knock down his golden gates and I will da-da-da-da. On reflection, I mean, someone tweeted this earlier and was like, what the hell was she talking about? And I'm like, I don't know what she was talking about. Why did the Rani say that? What a
are you on
strange
about,
thing to
Lil?
say.
What are you on about?
So, and I still, because I was sure that Mrs. Flood was some kind of a god, because I was like, well, she's appearing in different times, different places, different costumes, with appearing to have, a minimal effort in doing so. But I guess she was following the Doctor between all of these worlds and has been kind of almost like hitching a lift from place to place, and also wanting the Doctor to collect Vindicator readings to get them back to the 24th of May. But for what reason, we don't know. I really don't like in the reveal that, well, production-wise, it seemed to just have nothing on the original By Generation, which was so beautifully shot with the camera kind of arching over the two of them, and it looked really good. And it almost, that in itself, in the moment, saved a lot of the By Generation for me, because I was like, oh, it looks good at least. Like, creatively, this looks cool, the two of them pushing against each other. The Rani seemed to By Generate and be completely unfazed by what had happened to them. Like, oh, we've By Generated. Well, yes, obviously. I was like, oh, what a strange reaction to this thing, because I don't think they necessarily witnessed the Doctor's By Generation. And then they start immediately acting as kind of two distinct individuals, which has really scrambled our understanding of what By Generation is, because previously we'd understood that the 14th Doctor lives out a life on Earth, dies, and at some point with all those memories becomes the 15th Doctor, which is in itself conceptually quite hard, because presumably that means that the 14th Doctor disappears in a cloud of smoke and glitter and then appears on the rooftop of Unit Tower.
Didn't Russell say he tripped on a brick?
Something like that, sure. And then just vanishes and becomes 15 and goes, whoa, I'm really, really me. And the Rani now, that means that that Mrs. Flood is older than the Rani, and, well, not older, as in more, but back in time old, is going to live out the rest of their life as Mrs. Flood and then become the Rani with all of Mrs. Flood's memories intact. So the two of them having any kind of a team-up is bizarre because they share one brain, surely. So talking about each other as if they're two different people and one is subservient to the other is bizarre to me immediately. So I'm not sure how they're going to explain this.
I wrote in my notes, By Generation is going to be the death of me.
Yeah.
And I just, I can't get my head around it as a concept. I don't know. I was fine with it as a one-off, but I just feel like are we going to keep doing this? Is this a new thing that's sticking around? I'm not a big fan.
I feel like the way that I I'm not a fan of Our Generation either. I feel like the way I would have wanted it to be is that sometimes the rug gets pulled from Doctor Who fans and it doesn't work. So for me, I think like Ruby's mum being nobody, and they're like, you thought she'd be someone, but she's not. I don't think that worked. I think there was potential here for us to have been paying so much attention to Mrs. Flood and be like, who's she? Is she a god? Is she a this? Is she the Rani? Is she that? And it turns out she's the Rani's companion. So she's not who we should be focusing on. There's somebody else.
Yeah.
And she's the funny, happy-go-lucky companion to the Rani. And that I would have been fine with. There could have been some funny line being like, oh, well, you've been paying attention to me. Like, she breaks the fourth wall. She talks to the audience. Like, you've been looking in the wrong places. And then we get the reveal she's working with the Rani. Because I do think New Rani, by Generator Rani, gives me the same feel as Kate Mara. Like, gives me the Rani vibe. I believe that she's the Rani. I don't believe Mrs. Flood has ever been the Rani. And she even calls Mrs. Flood. She calls her Mrs. Flood. She's like, come on then, Mrs. Flood. And that's just not how we understood By Generation to work. I think it makes it even trickier to understand.
It does. And apparently in Confidential, they kind of talk about the two as if they're quite different. Like, Mrs. Flood is one person, the Rani's another. There's also a question of kind of what the Rani's intentions are here, because as I understood it in Doctor Who, in the classic era, there was the Rani wasn't ever, she was kind of she was lawful evil, not chaotic evil, whereas the Master was chaotic evil, and the Master really saw himself as the Doctor's nemesis, while the Rani was kind of like, I'm kind of above whatever this is. This whole dispute you two have going on, it's embarrassing, and I'm not involved. You can, I'll ally myself with whoever is useful. Broadly speaking, she finds the Doctor to be a bit of a pest in that he'll get in the way of her plans, and because he's such a goody two shoes, she's like, oh, for goodness sake, stop ruining my nice experiments. But beyond that, doesn't really have a particular beef with the Doctor, as long as the Doctor doesn't get in her way. So to now pursue the Doctor specifically is one thing, and now we also have to retread old ground, because we have to go over where has the Rani been since the Time War, and why is it taken until now for the Rani to reveal herself is another question we need to now explore a bit. But in 2 episodes, again, we have an hour and a half to do all of this, which is not very long.
I just have never, but I mean, not in a sense of the Susan one where like I think I had reasons for not wanting Susan to come back. I just have never really found the Rani particularly interesting as a concept. I think there's interesting ideas in there, but in the 2 stories that she had, obviously aside from Dimensions in Time, which may be a masterpiece that I haven't uncovered yet, I just never really vibed that much. I just thought, just never felt like the differences from the Master were strong enough to justify. I think if they went further with it, and if that's what they're planning to do, then I'm up for it. I mean, again, it's been a while since I've watched those Riley stories, so maybe I'd feel differently if I went back and watched it. I just felt like I don't feel the same about the Rani as I do someone like the Meddling Monk, because I feel like the Meddling Monk on a base level is just an entirely different type of Time Lord. And I just felt the Rani was just, never really did it for me. And I just think as well, like you said, Mrs. Flood has just given me absolutely no indications of being anything like the Rani. So if we're sort of just plastering the Rani onto, but now Archie Panjabi, who fantastic actress, has come along and is now doing very much more what we expect of the Rani. Yeah. So now I'm just really confused as to what the whole Mrs. Flood thing was about and what the intentions were there. And also it's just, I think, Sam, you touched on it as well, the subversion side of things. I think you hadn't, and maybe we'll get this in the next 2 episodes somewhere, but I just think in terms of a subversion point of view, it's the least interesting reveal to me. I was struggling throughout the series to think, what does an interesting reveal for Mrs. Flood look like? And I liked the idea of, maybe Mrs. Flood is about to reveal her grand plan and another villain just comes out of nowhere and sort of mows her down. And it's just like, nope, we're taking over now. Or sort of piggybacks on what she's done. And like then it sort of go, we know how that Mrs. Flood is a powerful being. So what does the person above that look like? Jesus, like they must be insanely powerful.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just didn't find it particularly interesting. I think the reveal itself was executed in a really weird way. The fact that it's mid-credits, the fact that it's to Gary and Mike. Why did Gary and Mike?
For Gary and Mike.
It's almost like Gary and Mike are the audience surrogates, because I feel like there's going to be so many people who aren't hardcore Doctor Who fans at home also going, "Who are you? Who are you? Who's the Rani? Is the Rani known by people who aren't hardcores?"
Yeah.
Probably not. I mean, this is a struggle that I've had in this era with returning monsters, because we've had, the Toy Maker, we've had the Midnight Monster, we've had Sutek, we've got the Rani. Every single time they brought back a classic villain, they've acted completely differently to how they acted when they originally. So, with the Toy Maker in the first Doctor, like, the Toy Maker cheats and the Doctor cheats, and they're trying to, like, beat each other at their own game. Whereas now, there's all the rules of fair play and they would never cheat. And the Midnight Monster behaves differently. Sutek is a completely different character. And what I hope with the Rani's return is that they do emphasize the difference between someone like her and someone like the Master, where, like you were saying, Arthur, the Master's chaotic evil, whereas she's quite, like, organized, structured evil. And I hope they make enough of a difference and they don't just treat her like a new character, because I also feel like, if I'm being honest, I don't think that the monster reveals for returning monsters, have been as good as they were in Russell's first era, whereas we were reintroduced to the Daleks, we were reintroduced to the Cybermen, reintroduced to the Master. So we, as like kids watching, we care because we have been taught who these people are, whereas with these returning monsters, I feel like we're just told, and I'm interested to see what they do with the next two episodes, but we're kind of just told, it's the Rani. And like you were saying, Josh, like, if you don't know who the Rani is, why do I care? Like, you know what I mean? And so I'm curious to see how they reintroduce the Rani as a character to us.
Yeah. As well, I think, like I said, in terms of the execution of it, is like, we're now sort of going to have to do the same reveal again when the Doctor finds out Mrs. Flood is the Rani, and the Doctor find out because then it's like, it's a bit like the Susan thing, where it's like, for the second time we do this, he's going to fall a little bit flat in the finale. And I'm just really interested to what Witchworld and the Reality War are going to be, because it feels like we've set up so much. And I feel like this has been sort of a running theme with Doctor Who for many years now, in that we set up so much for the finale, and then we get to the last two episodes, or the last episode, and it's like, oh, we've got to wrap all this up now. And I worry about having a similar problem, where it's like, there isn't really a world where we can wrap all of these threads up satisfyingly in an hour and a half or whatever it is. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel sad that I'm grumpy. I don't want to be grumpy. I really want to look at the positives, but I just it's like I said, Sam, before we recorded, it's like someone's made an episode out of my list of Doctor Who no-nos, and it's like I really, really wanted to like it this week.
Yeah.
But it's just done too many things that go against what I like in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And you said it as well, Alasdair. It's like everyone's list is different.
Yeah.
Everyone's sort of vibes of like, oh, this is what I want from Doctor Who, this is what I don't want. But between the Susan reveal, which didn't fully work for me, the Rani reveal, which really didn't work for me, and then the messy political message on top of it, even though there is fun stuff in this episode that I enjoy, like Rylan, who, in terms of the arc, I just want to say as well, does this imply that Rylan is the only person to survive the end of Earth?
Yes, the only one.
That's it, really. Rylan is the last human.
And
is Rylan Cassandra?
He's Cassandra.
Rylan is Cassandra.
Yes.
Truthers. Yeah.
I mean, when he thought he was dying, he was like, not again. So maybe he died in whatever happened in May. And then they just like, you know who we want for our song contest?
Yeah.
You.
I mean, the good news for you as Interstellar Song Contest dislike her is that presumably when they fix the 25th of May, it no longer happens because I think there'll be ripples and time will correct. So don't worry, there will be no Interstellar Song Contest very soon.
Yeah, it'll be erased.
It will be gone.
No, I mean, like I said, I'm glad people found enjoyment from it. I'm glad you two found more enjoyment from it than I did.
Yeah.
And like I said, the messy political messages definitely my main gripe.
Yes.
Anyway, hopefully they pull it back in the finale. I really, really hope they do. I'm not one of these people who is wishing for the death of Doctor Who. I'm not wanting it to fail.
No.
I really hope they wrap it up and maybe do some things that retroactively make this episode feel a little bit more palatable for me.
Yeah.
But if we don't really get any like returns to the corporation and stuff like that, I struggle to feel like what could pull it back for me. Yeah. So let's take a little look into something that I dislike more than the Interstellar Song Contest, at least. It's that horrible little hell pit that is bloody Twitter.
For God's sake! Bloody Twitter!
So, bloody Twitter, we have got some messages from listeners, and we will rattle through a few of these. Joshua Carpenter at JoshuaCC252 said, "It definitely has some good bits to it and great intentions, but I think it's a victim of the timeline they wrote and produced these stories in. But on some positives, I'm still loving seeing different shades of Belinda and the Doctor together. There were some impressive visuals, and the song at the end was a powerful scene, if complicated by the earlier issues, and it's a hit casting for the Rani." So, yeah, there's definitely things in there that I agree with. I think visually as well, we didn't really touch on that, but I do think it looks lovely. I think there's some really nice looking stuff in here. Yeah, I've got Reese Dell on Instagram said, "Somehow the most and least surprising episode ever. The first 90% was good fun, really interesting story with something to say, and an excellent guest cast. In terms of that cameo, very interesting. Let's just hope it lives up to expectations. The Doctor's darkness was portrayed very well. As for Mrs. Flood, well, we all saw that coming. At least we can stop predicting that particular character every single series now." And as well, Hazza_12D on Instagram said, "On a side note from the plot, I was quite disappointed that this episode wasn't chock-a-block with cameos from different Who species. Could have had Sycorax or Slitheen or the Cat People. Felt like a missed opportunity for more fan service, though we did get a fair bit." I think that's fair, but one thing that I did think when I read that was like, you know, Rings of Akaten sort of gets criticism leveled at it for being like, oh, we're just delving into the props department for a week to get a load of old masks out and parade them around. And I feel like you don't really want that leveled at what is essentially the most expensive Doctor Who episode ever made. And there's a lot of other stuff to cover in this episode, so maybe it would have been a bit too far. But, you know, maybe a little Slitheen.
I just wanted
one
Slitheen. That's all I wanted.
One Slitheen Carpenter. That's what we wanted.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Well, that was bloody Twitter. Thank you all for messaging in. But now it's the main event. It is the main event where we find out who gets 0 points or 12 points.
Yeah.
And it's Sam versus Alasdair in Quiz Chibnall.
Oh my.
Okay.
Wow.
So I haven't actually counted how many answers there are for this category, but the way that it works is I'm going to give you a category. There are various different answers. I think there's at least 20 or 30 here, so there's a lot of answers, and we're going to go back and forth between Alasdair and Sam, giving answers on a slight time limit. I make the rules, so basically, if I decide you're taking the piss a bit, I will hurry you along, but you're going to give answers, and whoever continues to give correct answers, and if you give a wrong answer, then if the next person gets it right, they win. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So your category is celebrities and people who have played themselves in Doctor Who. Obviously, it's relating to the theme. There's a couple this week which I won't say by name because they are obviously eligible answers in this.
Yeah.
But we are looking for the names of celebrities who have played versions of themselves in Doctor Who. One thing I will specify is voice acting roles of robots, such as the android or Trinny and Susanna do not count. Because
Okay.
they're technically playing a not the same person.
It's not themselves.
Yes, they have to be credited as themselves. I'm hoping there isn't any I've missed, but we'll go through and we'll see. I spent about an hour last night trawling TARDIS Wiki, and I hope TARDIS Wiki hasn't failed me like it's failed me many times before. But if you want to argue on, you can argue on. But we're going to start. We're going to start with Alasdair.
Okay.
And I need the name of a celebrity who has played themselves in Doctor Who.
Okay. Alex Jones of The One Show.
Alex Jones is correct.
Okay.
Very, very good.
Matt Baker of Blue Peter.
Matt Baker of Blue Peter is also correct. I like that. You're not going for the obvious ones, first of all. You're saving them back. Save them back. Yeah.
Hold them back. Yeah, that's going to catch me out. Joel Dommett of The Masked Singer.
Joel Dommett is correct. Obviously, most of these are this series.
Davina McCall.
Oh, Davina McCall as well. Davina McCall is correct.
Davina McCall of everything Davina McCall has ever done.
Yes.
Oh my God, already struggling. Wait, what? My brain in a quiz situation just goes blank. So this is going to go really well. Oh my God, who else has been themselves? Am I on a timer?
I'll tell you if you're taking too long.
Oh, Graham Norton, right? Did we say that?
We've not said Graham Norton yet. You can
Thank
have
God.
Graham Norton.
Okay, that gives me some thinking time.
That's fine.
I'll not give you much thinking time. Rylan Clark.
Rylan Clark is correct. See, this is the problem. When you get a rapid answer back, you're straight back on the clock.
You don't get much time to think.
No.
There's been at least one BBC News presenter, but I don't know them by name. It's been like a few presenters who've come on. Oh, God. Who's been themselves?
This is in all of Doctor Who, by the way. Classic and New Who.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Anne Widdecombe.
Anne Widdecombe is correct. I will also say minisodes do not count. And basically finding this information is very hard because of the amount of children in need and comic relief sketches the Doctor has showed up in. And they're technically classified on TARDIS Wiki as canon adventures, which is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Dimensions in Time.
Thank you, Dimensions in Time. I'm going to bounce off your answer and I'm going to say Tom Fletcher from McFly.
Okay. So you could get a role here with Tom Fletcher from McFly.
It's now a McFly quiz of who's in McFly. I don't know anyone else in McFly. Oh no! Well, I'm not going to be able to answer that one. Who else endorsed the Master is the question. Because it was really a series 1 to 4 thing to have
there's
real
a lot
characters.
in here.
I know,
but I can't think who else has been in it since then.
There's one that I've got, and I think I'm right, but I'm obviously going to wait.
Oh, I might already be out. I can't think of any more. That's pathetic, isn't it?
Oh no. Well, no. I think you've had a good run so far. You've got a lot.
I've got some more in the back of my head.
Should we see how much further Sam could have gone? With me
it's
being
not
an
going to be
obvious
much
loser.
Alasdair, are you checking out?
I'm tapping out. I've panicked.
Okay, well, if Sam gets one right now, then Sam is officially crowned the Quiz Chibnall champion for this one.
Okay. Trisha Goddard?
Trisha Goddard is correct.
Oh, no.
And you are in love with a ghost.
Who else could we have had?
So,
is there anyone outside of the RTD?
Is it Hugh Edwards from Fear Her when he did that? I mean, obviously, not anymore.
But we'll just very, very quickly say Hugh Edwards and then move on very swiftly.
I was trying to think, the newsreaders, like you were saying, asked that I just can't, because there's been loads, like, I love A Christmas Story, but I don't know who they're called. I don't know their names.
Yeah. Are there any others that you think are questionable ones that you were maybe thinking about, or ones that you think before? I'll run through the list of the rest that we haven't done.
I'm trying to think of all the times that I know they have been in the show, but I can't remember their name. You're gonna tell us
as soon as we've finished. I'm like, Paul O'Grady is an obvious one.
Paul O'Grady is correct. Yeah, Paul O'Grady.
Oh my God, the guy. What's in the 11th Hour? Oh my goodness, Brian Cox. He's in it.
Brian Cox is correct.
Oh,
there
Richard
is
Dawkins.
Also Richard Dawkins is in Power of Three, I believe. Oh no, he's not. No, he's in Stolen Earth.
I know he's in the Stolen Earth because he goes, "We've moved."
The one that you're thinking of
There's
from
all
the
these
11th Hour. The one that you're thinking of from the. Do you want me to run through the answers?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, no, go for it. You tell us.
So, I'll go through in alphabetical order. We have Derek Acora. No one needs me anymore. Alasdair Appleton. Shirley Ballas was in The Devil's Chord and is technically herself, but even though, why is she in the 1960s?
That still annoys
Let's not ask too many questions. Rita Chakrabarti. Murray Gold played himself in The Devil's Chord as well.
He did.
Nick Hewer. Jenny Hill. Danny Jones. Harry Judd from McFly. Kenneth Kendall. Alex McIntosh. Andrew Marr is in series 1 a couple of times, I believe.
Yeah.
Jason Mohammed, who's the newsreader who was in Doctor Who like 5 times, I think. The one you were thinking of from the 11th Hour is Patrick Moore.
Patrick Moore. I like Patrick Moore.
The other one that you're thinking of who was endorsing the Master, I believe, is Sharon Osbourne.
Of course.
Oh my God.
Courtney Pine, Dougie Pointer, the last McFly one. Hannes Radaby from Strictly as well. Amal Rajan from 73 Yards last year.
Oh my God.
Was interviewing Roger Ap Gwilym.
Yes.
Jonathan Ross is a contentious one because I think it's archive footage, but he was in Lucky Day for like a frame. So we'll give him that. Alan Sugar, Bill Turnbull and Sian Williams, who were the BBC breakfast presenters who were interviewing Charles Dickens, I believe, in
that was it. Another good ghost
Wedding
story.
of River Song. So
Very
a
good.
long list, but well
was a
done,
long
Sam.
list.
You've taken the Quiz Chibnall crown. You are one of
Thank
our many
you.
victors this series.
He has got a better memory than me, and he is better at Doctor Who quizzes than me, and has taken part in more than me.
Here come the excuses.
This
This is praise.
neither here nor there.
This is a concession. This is me saying, well
Look.
done.
Well done.
Oh, thank
well
you,
done, Sam.
darling.
You win absolutely nothing other than pride. So
I'll take the bragging rights and
We
pride.
like
all you get. But what I will say is thank you both for joining me on Who Knew to chat about the Interstellar Song Contest. As I said, been a bit of a wild week, a bit all over the place, a lot of contentious things to discuss, but we muddled through, and I think we did quite well. I will give you a few minutes to plug whatever you want to plug. I don't know which one of you wants to take this on, but please, in terms of WHOLALA, I'm a big fan of the pod. Please send people wherever they need to go. Take
Come on over.
your time to plug.
Go on, Sam. As a winner,
bless
you're allowed
you.
the plug.
Oh, am I doing?
Yeah,
I'll do the plug
earned
then.
it.
Yeah, well, you can listen to us every week on WHOLALA, a queer Doctor Who podcast. We're on all podcast platforms. We're at WHOLALAPod on all social media. We've got Instagram, TikTok, X, and Blue Sky. We also post videos on our YouTube channel every so often. We've recently had the fans from Lux and the Gallifrey Cabaret on the pod. Just have a bit of fun over there as
Have a
well.
bit of fun over there.
Listen to this and then jump over there.
Jump over there. Exactly. We're probably
Yes,
gonna
absolutely.
go into a lot more of the campiness this week of all the confetti cannon moments and do a little bit more of our brain off enjoyment.
Yeah. Well, you got all the deep shit out of the way.
We
on
got
here.
the
And
deep
now-
shit
And now you
okay.
can do all the fun stuff
Yeah.
over on WHOLALA. So
Now we
please
can
go
do
and
the
listen.
confetti cannons.
Yes, I do apologise. We went to depths today that I was not expecting to go to.
Needs
But
to be done.
It was a fun chat. But again, thank you both for coming on. I will put all of the links for everything. I'll put your Linktree down in the description. I urge everybody to go over to WHOLALA because I'm a big fan. I've been listening to it a lot recently,
you.
catching up,
Thank
trying
you.
to get up to speed with trying to get up to your most recent episodes. But I feel like I'm doing that for about 7 different Doctor Who podcasts.
Yeah.
And it means
a lot
that
of
I'm
us.
just stuck in like 2023, 2024 episodes where everyone's
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
what's going to happen with Mrs. Flood? And
Like,
it's,
I
now we
wonder what
know.
they thought about the Devil's Chord.
Yeah. But I'm enjoying it all the same. So thank you both for coming on. And in terms of Who Knew, you've been listening to Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. I've been your host, as always, Josh Carr. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. You can please like, share, subscribe. We're very, very close to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I'd love to hear by the end of season 2. So praying that we do. If we do, I'd love it. And I'll throw a big party somewhere. And yes, please share it around. Please show as much love as you can to the podcast because it really helps out. You can find us on all the socials, Who Knew Podcast or whoknewdwpod on a couple of platforms, but all of the links will be in the description. And you can find me, Josh Ryan Carr, on everything. And yes, it's been an absolute pleasure. I will be joined next week, mentioned earlier on, I believe, in the chat. I'll be joined by David Chipakipaku from the Who Watch podcast next week as we delve into Wish World. And I can't wait to find out what the hell is going to be going on in this.
Yeah.
But thank you again for coming on. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Dugadoo. We never really touched on Dugadoo.
Oh,
Go
Dugadoo.
to Wholala. I'm sure
You'll have to
you'll
come to
talk
Wholala to
about
listen to us talk
The
about
Dugadoo
Dugadoo.
review.
Yes.
Thanks for
We
having
all
us.
love Dugadoo. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you for listening.
See you soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. You can find us wherever you get your pods and on YouTube. Please give us a like, share, subscribe, and a review if you can. It really helps us out. Massive thanks to Oliver Chenery for the Corridor of Fame intro and the Sononauts for lending their cover of the Doctor Who theme to be the theme for the podcast. Who Knew is a New Kid Media production.